Good morning. Thank you for taking part in Southern Gas Association's Natural Gas Take Action Month and for attending this webinar, the Town Hall, Natural Gas is Essential, Past, Present, and Future. We hope that everyone is safe and healthy during this unique time, and we appreciate your commitment to partnering with us to help change the narrative around natural gas. The purpose of federal and state antitrust statutes is to assure the preservation of a free and competitive economy. To achieve this end, these laws embody a general prohibition against any agreement or combination among competitors, which has the effect of unreasonably restraining trade. It is the policy of SGA to conduct its activities in strict compliance with all applicable federal and state antitrust laws and to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Please note that we've muted all attendees upon arrival today to reduce the background noise, since we acknowledge most of our audience is still currently working from home. We're relying more and more on technology of webinars these days. Technology is great, but in the rare event that you lose connection, do not worry, SGA is recording today's session. We welcome your comments and your questions. So if at any point you have a question for our panel, you can send your question or comment through the question option found on your control panel. I would now like to welcome Suzanne Ogle, President and CEO of Southern Gas Association, to introduce our panel. Suzanne?
Good morning. Thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our Natural Gas Past, Present, and Future Town Hall. The most exciting part about a town hall is that you get asked questions. So I want to encourage everybody to put any questions that you have in the chat box. You've got three great guys here. You've got Arthur Corbin, who is the CEO of Municipal Gas Authority of Georgia. You have our current chair of the board, Don Raikes, who is president of gas distribution for Dominion Energy. And you have our upcoming chair of the board, Jimmy Staton, who is the CEO of Southern Star Central Gas Pipeline. So lots of great wisdom and resources here. Please put all your questions in the chat box. They're ready to take them. I like to refer to these three as the magi of natural gas from the lands of municipal transmission and distribution. And one of the things I love most about them is these are great guys, lots of fun, lots of intelligence. So let's get it going with the poll. Nicole, you want to roll the first poll? And the poll is going to be, how would you like to run this conversation? Like the presidential debate, where, oops, wrong poll. Well, so we'll start with a different poll. We'll start with, where would you like the panel to focus their time? On innovation and how to make the industry relevant, on regulation and how it's going to impact business, or on communicating natural gas's role in the reliable clean energy future? So if you all take a second and go on and vote for what your choice is, we'll kind of try to tailor some of the questions in that direction. So take a few minutes and go. Nicole will prompt you and let us know how the results are coming in.
Great, and it looks like right now we've only have about 15% of our audience that has voted, so go ahead and make your selections. And sorry, we launched this one first, and then we'll go to our next one right after this. So great, it looks like about 50% of you have voted. You've still got a little more time to make your selections as I see those numbers coming up. All right, we're at about 75%, so I'll give you about 5 more seconds and then we'll share the results.
All right, it looks like most people want to talk about communicating natural gas's role in the reliable clean energy future. So we will really focus on that. And then the second most point of interest was innovation and how it's going to make the industry relevant, all probably tied together. So we will poll Don and Jimmy and Arthur on some of those. And hey, Nicole, you want to go ahead and launch the second question, please? This was the one I wanted to start with. What format would you like to see for the town hall today? Like the presidential debate format where everybody interrupts each other, the VP debate where there's condescending eye rolls, or would you like these gentlemen to act like adults? So if you would please make your choice.
So we'll give you about 10 or 15 seconds to get your vote in. We've only got about 10% of our audience that has voted so far. I like that there's some humor in the group this morning. Great.
People are chatting their own answers.
Well, not everybody is selecting the one you would think, so it's a little humorous.
Can I interrupt Jimmy now? Or do I just want to roll my eyes?
All All right, we've got about 75% of you guys that have voted. So we'll go ahead and close this poll and share the results so everyone can have a good laugh this morning.
Like adults, well, we'll do our best, although the presidential debate is also a possibility. So thanks for playing along with us and letting us have a little bit of fun this morning. Like I said, these are great guys. They're not only smart, they're fun, and that's really what makes our industry so remarkable. So let's just go ahead and get started. As we near the end of 2020, and we're kind of closing out what's a black swan year for our industry, or maybe more accurately, a flock of black swans, because there's so much going on. For those who haven't heard the term black swan, you probably heard it a lot this year, but I'm not sure everybody knows exactly what it means, so I'll just define it real quickly. And it's an event that has a low probability or predictability, but a really high consequence, and there's no way around it. That's certainly what coronavirus is. And I think regardless of whether people think that a pandemic is something you should expect, it never would have expected to have the results and the implications that it did for us. The domestic global spread brought the energy demand to almost a screaming halt. There was impact to our operations and our employees as people. There's production forecasts were pretty much out the window. We had to delete the pricing model sheets and push out dates on infrastructure projects and timelines. And now as we move into 2021, I think it's fair to say that all of the natural gas executives are going to be able to expect increased pressure on ESG issues, environmental, social, and governance. And that means there's going to be demands to reduce flaring, the carbon footprint, and the overall environmental impact. Our companies are also going to be under a microscope regarding social issues and how we contribute to our communities, which we know well that we do. I think that's really regardless of who wins the election, because that's being driven by investors. So Don, I guess I'd like to start with you. With all the pressure on the natural gas industry today, have you ever looked back and just said, oh my God, where do we go wrong? And how do we address it now?
That's a good question. The answer is yes, I have. I think all of us would say we have. And my answer goes to the quote, denial is not just a river in Egypt, would be one way to put it. Or I'm also look back and I'm reminded of another quote that says, you are never as good or as bad as what the press says about you. Because just remember just a few years ago, okay, our industry was riding high on amazing success. We were using innovation to bring a superior product to market, innovation that made that product abundant, inexpensive, with dramatic benefits to the United States economy, particularly in 2008 during the recession. In addition to all that, we were helping to clean up the environment and the air in historic ways. And you look at it, in fact, the environmental community was singing our praises. Public perception of natural gas was very favorable. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the environmental community that had previously sang our praises, having effectively killed coal, needed a new target. And guess what? They chose us. And I think as I look back that we underestimated their ability to effectively turn segments of our population against our success. And a couple things. You know, they've got very good financing. And second, they're very good at messaging, very good. And that's why we're here today. In fact, the whole Take Action Month, the theme behind that is, number one, I think we need to set the message straight. And number two, we've got to call our colleagues to action. And what are the keys to that? Well, we've got to activate all of our colleagues, our friends who know the real facts and become active in our defense. Now, part of that is we've got to point out the weaknesses and the falsehoods of the extremist opponent's arguments. But we've got to do so in a way that's very diplomatic and factual. I mean, we realize that every industry, including ours, impact the environment. And so it's incumbent on us to do everything we can to be responsible. I mean, we all want a clean environment. We are all the above when it comes to energy. The difference is the journey to get there. And I think what we offer as an industry is we offer a balanced approach that balances the environment, the economy, and still gets to the same endpoint.
Yeah, I think that's really the key to it, is to help understand that there's such balance in what we're offering. I think there's never, when you are an extremist, that's never going to be the right solution for almost anything in life. And so you have to find the middle ground. Jimmy, when we think about the threats to the industry and you think about natural gas in the past, what do you think that the biggest issue in the past was versus today versus what the threat's going to be going forward?
Great question, Suzanne. Thanks. And before I get started, I want to respond to what Don said. I'd like to take some of my time to. I'm just obviously just kidding. But first of all, I really do. Thanks, Suzanne, for hosting this. Thanks to Don and Arthur. It's awesome to be on a panel with the two of you, and so I'm really grateful for this opportunity. But I started in this industry, to respond directly. I started in the industry in the early 80s, coming off of the shortages of the 1970s. And so in the past, for natural gas, we've always been the preferred way to heat your homes. The processes that utilize natural gas have always been the right ones. Cooking, hot water heating. It was always what we were the preferred product. Where we weren't making headway was in large part because we didn't provide a reliable source of energy for other segments of the industry, and our prices were very volatile. And so in the past, we needed to address that, and quite honestly, the industry did. It innovated again, and the shale revolution essentially solved that problem for us and for this industry. And so at present, I think one of the things that's also interesting about this industry, when you compare it with many others, is we are a bit more fragmented. We have producers on one hand. They separated back in the 70s. Pipelines weren't allowed to be in that business anymore. We were transporters, and then we have the retail market. That fragmentation, if you will, I think works a little bit against us as an industry right now. We speak in paragraphs to have to explain all parts of our industry, and unfortunately, our opponents are able to speak in sound bites. And in today's world, it's very difficult to get folks to listen to an entire paragraph, and so we have to do more as an industry. And so I applaud Don and SGA for putting together Take Action Month, because this is exactly what we need to do. I won't reiterate what Don did, because I know you all thought he would never stop. But he's absolutely right. We have to own our narrative as an industry, because we've got to do something to eliminate a little bit of this fragmentation and demonstrate and speak as one voice about the value that natural gas continues to bring throughout the supply chain in the market area. And then the second thing for us, and Don mentioned this a little bit too, is we are a little bit slow adapting to change. We have seen the renewables push for a number of years, but I'll talk about the pipeline industry. We're still talking in terms of emissions intensity, when we at Southern Star, for instance, are talking about reducing our emissions overall. And I think as an industry, that's what we're going to have to be able to continue to demonstrate. So in the present, I think it's owning our narrative and managing as an industry going forward. And then what makes me so excited about the future, because natural gas really should be a cornerstone to a cleaner environment, and is going to be a cornerstone to a cleaner environment, is innovation. This industry has always demonstrated an amazing ability to innovate. And so we are going to have to innovate. We got to innovate our message as an industry, and we're doing that. We've got to innovate our operations, and you're seeing us doing that. People are investing back in our businesses again in order to reduce emissions and reduce gas leakage, for instance, throughout the supply chain. And then the last area is we've got to innovate our technology. We have to, smart grid on the electric side of the industry must mean that ours is dumb grid, and that is certainly not the case. And we need to continue to bring artificial intelligence and other technologies to bear to demonstrate that to everyone in the United States and beyond. So innovation, I couldn't be more excited because I think this is the best industry for innovating. Thanks.
So everybody, Jimmy just dropped a little hint of something that's near to come. So that's awesome, Jimmy. Thank you. You know, Arthur, as I think about it, last week on our decarbonization webinar, so we've had a series of webinars, a great kickoff with Alex Epstein, phenomenal webinar, a really good conversation about energy, positive, realistic. And then we had one last week on decarbonization, and she went through the amazing results of the lower carbon by state, and even in some states up in the Northeast where there's even less carbon because of natural gas than where they started out with on a baseline. And so when you think about that, how has natural gas contributed to the dramatic success that we've had in reducing carbon emissions from your point of view over the last 30 years?
Well, Suzanne, a great question, and really, I applaud all that SGA is doing. I mean, I think this is what we need to be doing. And what's amazing to me is Jimmy talked a little bit about, you know, just the fragmented industry, you know, that you have the different pieces, but that's also our strength. And you see some of it on this call. I mean, you see, you know, Jimmy's working with the production side of the business, and in between the production side and the end use side, and getting it from one end to the other end. Don and what he focuses on within Dominion, he's got the end use and the utilities that deliver to the ultimate consumer, and we do that as well as municipalities. And I think SGA, what's amazing is SGA kind of brings them all together. But we do, you know, we need to do a better job. And I agree with what Don had to say earlier and what Jimmy had to say. But let's, you know, I look at decarbonization because, you know, it's something we need to do. And frankly, as an industry, we've recognized that we're a low carbon fuel. We hadn't gotten that message out very well, but that is how we've contributed. I mean, it's absolutely amazing to look at the statistics because it's over half the amount of emissions of coal. And so, you know, there has been dramatic shifts from coal, which has been a great energy source for this country. But as we look to lower carbon and we look to some of the more economical resources as well. So natural gas has done it on both fronts in that it's economical, but it is lower emissions. And so it's opened that door. I think the other thing it's done is it's helped the development of solar and wind. I mean, you've got a very reliable, just an incredible infrastructure and resource in natural gas. So it's there on demand. And so when the electric grid needs it, you know, as we increase wind and solar and those things are happening, and that's a good thing for our country and for the environment. And I think we contribute to that. I think the other thing that's amazing is if you look at our statistics as an industry, and this goes to Jimmy's point of innovation, it's end use innovation and efficiencies. We've added in the residential sector over the last 20 years, we've added 12.5 million customers. And when you look at the use in that sector, it's actually not really changed over that 20-year period. So you got 12.5 million more customers and no increase in use, which that just speaks to the efficiency, which also speaks to lower emissions. If we can use the energy more efficiently, we're gonna, by definition, have lower emissions. So it's really contributed in just a huge way. I would say we wouldn't be at early 1990 levels on our CO2 emissions if it weren't for the innovations and what has been delivered through the natural gas industry.
Well, you know, that really goes to the point. I mean, as industry professionals, we all know, and I know all of our members are really delivering innovative solutions for the environment and for I mean, you look at renewable natural gas, it's negative emission. There's not a renewable that offers that other than renewable natural gas. And, you know, those solutions aren't out there. We've got talented people that are entering the industry or that are in the industry that are making movement every day. We've got technology, as Don referenced earlier. We've got collaboration and all this stuff. And I think sometimes as an industry professional, it's really frustrating to see how much we are part of the solution and not be able to communicate that well. So to the point that everybody's already made, we have Natural Gas Take Action Month, which was the brainchild of Mr. Don Raikes there and his Dominion team. And I think that it's such a great idea that we're going to do going forward every year in October. So everybody get ready. But we are excited to see the engagement that we've had among our members, even our non-members. I've been out on LinkedIn and people are just grabbing onto it because they feel so passionate about getting the message out and helping people understand. And I think for so many years, we were just quietly going about our business and we let the narrative get away from us. So now we have to go on and bring it back. And each part of Natural Gas Take Action Month focuses on a different one of the benefits of natural gas. So this week it's reliable. And so Don, given that that you know about Natural Gas Take Action Month, you thought of it, knowing all the facts about natural gas and being able to tell our stories to our community, I think you already alluded to it. When you got to start a conversation with somebody who doesn't want to hear your facts or their mind is already closed, where do you start?
Thanks. And I'm excited about, I see our industry finally coming together. Jimmy mentioned earlier that we're fragmented. And I think because of what we've seen happen, I see more excitement about getting the message right. So the question, how would you start that conversation? And so I would step back and say, in the spectrum of people, you have this spectrum, 25% over here are bought in, they understand natural gas, the benefits of it, they're good. 25% on the other side are people who, no matter what we did, they're never going to come around. So we need to focus on what I call the middle 50. And so how do you reach that middle 50? And I'll offer some ideas. And I think the first thing is we have to be very good listeners and we need to be diplomatic. I know that I'm so passionate about the business, sometimes I can get a little defensive. So we can't think that we're going to be successful if we have aggressive rhetoric, even if the facts support us. To give you an example, we talk about the load factor of wind and solar and how that's really dependent on what source you go to, 40% or less. And you could say, well, they don't work. These don't work. Or you can say, guess what? You need the pyramid of energy sources, all the above. And the base of that pyramid is natural gas because it's 100% available. We enable the other energy sources, which we think are very crucial to the energy mix. The other thing, get to know your audience. And you've got to presume innocence and seek common ground. So when I say presume innocence, there are actually people, and I understand, who believe wholeheartedly that if we don't get rid of fossil fuels very quickly, that the damage to our environment will be irreversible. Right. And so they believe that. And so you need to offer an alternative in a diplomatic way. You need to also, I think, look for common ground in terms of we all support a clean environment for our families and for our generations to come. But then say, let me share why I think natural gas is part of that sustainable future. We need to point out that critical partnership between the other energy sources and how all of us support an all the above. So if you would tell me, Don, I think natural gas should be 80% of the energy mix, I'd say absolutely not. We need a mix. We need various sources. Then you need to get into illustrate in real terms how it works, as I said before. The other thing is we need to discuss the need to balance cost and reliability. Cost and reliability. There are a lot of social issues today, and cost of energy, gas has spoiled us. It's been so flat and inexpensive for so long. As energy costs start to rise, that's going to become an even more important issue. So then I would say encourage discussion. Seek to understand their position in a non-adversarial way. Then finally, thank them for the consideration. Our objective in this is to present a credible alternative for thought, not necessarily I'm going to win them over right now, but I want to give them the opportunity to think through it. So SGA has done a great job this year, Suzanne. On the website, there are so many sources that help us tell our story. The Natural Gas Ambassadors Program, the Chairman's Toolkit that's available online. But I have a real example of this just a few years ago when we could ride on airplanes. I was coming back from Utah. I was in Dallas, and I got on the plane, and they announced as soon as we got out on the runway that we were going to be stuck for 3 hours. The gentleman next to me was a young guy, millennial, and we started talking. And he let me know he was an environmentalist, and he was a very good one. And I told him what I did, and I could just feel the tension come up. And I said, how am I going to do this? How do I have a conversation? I want to be with this guy for a long time today. Long story short, some of the SGA training that we had a few years ago about how to communicate on how to try to find common ground. And we were stuck so long, the beverage cart came by. I said, I want to buy my environmentalist friend a beverage of his choice. And after that, we had a great conversation for about an hour and a half. But that's just one example.
I think that, I did something this last week. I went on my Facebook, on my own personal Facebook, and I grew up in California, and I have a lot of family out in the area still, some of them up in Northern California. They're particularly environmentally sensitive people. And I decided to go out and put my thoughts on Facebook and put out there link to Alex's recording. And I started it on there assuming that I was going to get flogged by a number of people. But I said, how open-minded would you be? And because everybody wants to be perceived as open-minded, right? So if they say, well, no, I'm not open-minded, then you close the door already. So I think there's opportunities like that to not put them into a defensive place, but to start a conversation. And so there is a question in the chat box right now, and I do want to encourage everybody else to put questions in there. So the question is, before we move on, how do we as an industry own the narrative and speak with one voice, which is kind of what we're speaking to right now. But I don't know, Jimmy, Arthur, do you guys want to, Jimmy, 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Arthur, it's okay with you. I'll jump in. I think it is things like this, Suzanne, and I think it's the work that SGA is doing and the work that you're doing. Again, not everybody necessarily knows this, but Suzanne is reaching out to the other industry participants, AGA, NGSA, INGA, and the others, and how do we craft this message in the right way, and how does SGA play a role because of the breadth of how it stretches across all aspects of the natural gas supply chain. How do we craft a singular message? And so for me, it's exactly that. It's exactly the things that we are doing right now. It is the ambassadors program that SGA is offering up as well to everyone within SGA. But then it's demonstrating, as Don said, it's demonstrating a balance. It's not putting down other aspects of the industry. It is absolutely being as inclusive. Inclusion and diversity is not just about what we do inside our companies. It's outside our companies as well. And we need to make sure that we are being very inclusive of all of the opportunities out there to advance this agenda. And then we have to come together, and we're going to have to put our money where our mouth is, as well as throughout the industry, putting together a common message. And I see that developing within SGA. I see it developing in INGA and the other organizations, that recognition that we have got to have a common voice. And I think it's starting to happen, and these things help that happen.
Arthur, you want to share any thoughts on that?
I do. I want to jump in here. I think both Don and Jimmy have put forward some very good thoughts on how we can do it. I don't think anybody, if you're going to have a discussion and talk through things, you're not going to own anything. I mean, I think you're going to have a discussion, and so I think people knowing that, hey, I don't have to convince somebody, I do want to inform them. I do want to have a discussion. I want to understand where they're coming from. I want them to help them understand where we're coming from. And I think those are important things. But let me just say one thing, and that is, I think you do have to hit a place where you draw a line. And I'm just going to use one example right now. I mean, if you say you're opposed to an all-electric end-use future, you think that's not wise for our country, okay? There are those out there that would say, okay, you're against climate action. You really don't want to do the right thing. But wait a minute, who in their right mind would put everything into one basket? Look at your retirement plan. Is it invested in one investment? No. And you have diversity for a good reason, because things change and you don't know the future. You do not know the future. We don't know the future. And guess what? Natural gas infrastructure brings so much to the table, but one of the vital things that we need as a country is the ability to economically store and dispatch energy. Our industry brings that to the table. Guess what? I mean, down the road, we're going to see where we actually take excess renewable energy and turn that into a stored energy, perhaps through the natural gas infrastructure. Maybe that's the technology advances that come. So when we say we don't want all of our eggs in one basket, we don't think that's good for economic development in the United States, for people's jobs, for people's future, that doesn't mean we're opposed to climate action. But we do have to say, hey, electrification of all end use, if we move that down that path, we're limiting ourselves, guys. We're limiting ourselves, and we need to say that.
I think that as professionals, we have a much deeper understanding of how energy works and is consumed and transported, and other people don't understand the benefit of the infrastructure that already exists there and then how you get there. So I think, this is the week of natural gas is essential. So Jimmy, why don't you talk a little bit about the different ways it's essential and the infrastructure is essential to giving us the path forward to integrate renewables into our plan.
Thanks, Suzanne. And I think Arthur said it earlier, and I want to reiterate that we are a low carbon. We're not no carbon, but we are a low carbon fuel. And I think sometimes we forget to even talk about that as an industry. The other thing, though, I think is that we are plentiful and affordable. And to Don's point earlier, I think it's incredibly important that we acknowledge that there is likely to be battery power. That is a way of storing some of the energy that Arthur just talked about. I think we need to acknowledge that, but we also need to acknowledge the fact that it doesn't exist at scale today. And so that the only way really of being able to store energy is what we bring to the table, because we can withdraw gas from storage at any moment to start up a natural gas-fired plant when the wonderful renewables that, and again, I am a big supporter of renewables, but they are a little intermittent. In addition to that, what we can't have happen, I don't think, as a country, is an overbuild of the industry, because I don't think we can afford it. I don't think we can afford it. I don't think our homeowners can afford it, and I don't think our industry can afford the level and the type of overbuild we would have to have that could be relieved, quite honestly, with natural gas plants, because natural gas plants remain very easy to start, easy to shut back down. They are very land efficient, quite honestly, and that's obviously it's an area that we are seeing some pressure in the pipeline industry about use of land. So, I mean, I think that is one area that that we need to continue to tout, is we can be a much more effective way of being able to bring immediate energy to the table, utilizing natural gas. And we have always been creative and innovative as an industry. And so we recognize, I think we need to acknowledge, we recognize that we have methane leaks and that we have equipment that bleeds methane, but we are addressing that. We're addressing it across our industry right now. And so we're going to solve the pre-combustion issue with emissions here in the country. And then there's no reason as an industry we won't be able to solve the post-combustion. Because the one thing I think folks don't talk about is it's one thing to talk about how you're going to generate electricity, whether natural gas is going to be in the mix, and I think it should be in the mix for a long time. But what about that heating load? What about that heating load in areas that there are no real alternatives, or the alternatives are going to be so expensive that people aren't going to be able to afford it? Because I know the electric industry has done a phenomenal job, but the idea that they would be able to rebuild and serve the heating load, that's an entire rebuild of the electric distribution industry that, again, I don't think is affordable given everything that we're trying to do with renewables and otherwise. So I think we need to focus folks, continue to focus folks on, we are low cost, we are there, we are plentiful, and quite honestly, we are much more efficient use of energy and will be for the foreseeable future.
I look at California and the reliability there and the price of energy in California. And as I think about the economic implications that coronavirus has had on our country and people that are without jobs, and if you're stuck in this area where you have no other alternative except for very expensive power, you know, I would hate to see that go throughout our country and have other states be in the same situation as California. Or if you think about the Northeast during a very cold winter and they're relying on either energy that's not accessible or too expensive, I just think it could be such a hardship to people that are already under pressure. Jimmy, you talked a little bit about innovation, and Arthur, next week's focus of Natural Gas Take Action Month is innovation. And that's clearly the buzzword that's around all day. And so when you think about innovation as part of your business strategy in real terms, why don't you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about it earlier a little bit, you know, our industry certainly has been very innovative. But what I would say is our country's been known for innovation. And I think that comes with a free market economy and where you have choices. And frankly, it's innovation is how we get better at what we do. And we serve people better. We use things efficiently. We meet needs better. We solve problems through innovation. And so it's really critical. But just a few examples. If you look back over our industry over the last 30 years, in particular, you see incredible across all of our delivery, production and delivery system, and ultimately end use. You see incredible innovation. I mean, one of the reasons why we are exporting record amounts of natural gas today is because of the innovation in the production side of our business, and the fact that we talk about low cost, abundant, reliable. I mean, it's there. It's an incredible resource that this country has, and that's been through innovation in the production area and efficiency gains. You look at the pipeline segment, incredibly innovative, how they can efficiently lay lines, you know, directional drilling, and what they can do around rivers and things like that to protect the environment. Just amazing. And then you look at the compression technology, you know, how efficient those compressors are, and that's how we move gas through over 2.6 billion miles of underground pipeline in this country. I mean, it's a phenomenal resource, and the innovations around it. Then you think about the end use, and we just talked about it in the residential sector, that you've got such growth that has occurred, and yet we're not using any more energy, and that's through innovation. And so I'm very excited. I'm like Jimmy. I think there's more innovation to come. One of the things, and if you guys on this webinar have been keeping track of it, there's a partnership going on between Gas Technology Institute, which is really kind of the innovative arm, one of many in our industry, is partnering with EPRI, which is the electric side of this. They're called the Electric Power Research Institute, and they're looking at pushing through innovation for a low carbon future. So they're looking at low carbon electric generation technologies. They're looking at low carbon chemical energy carriers, the hydrogen alternatives, bioenergy, renewable natural gas. And so, it's just huge. And for us, our organization, it's one of our core, excuse me, it's one of our core values. And that is innovation. We know we're not going to exist as an organization if we don't innovate, if we don't have creativity in how we serve, then we're not going to be around for the next 30 years. So we need to innovate.
It's a SGA core value as well, pivot with purpose, and that's exactly what the industry is doing. Jimmy, I want to move to LNG, but before we do, real quick, there's one thing I was thinking. So when I looked at going back to that decarbonization webinar we had last week, and I was looking at the plans for everybody and how they're going to bring down to their zero carbon or whatever their promises are, it really relies on natural gas as part of the mix. And so if I look at the election, without getting political, but I look forward, and if there is a ban on fracking, you then take away that abundance of natural gas that's actually bringing everybody down to their low carbon promises. And I think that is something that is concerning. But Jimmy, I want to move on to LNG because I think you had a lot of insight on that, and that's certainly an opportunity to help the rest of the country, which is still producing at very high carbon intensive levels, as well as US. So can you talk a little bit about LNG, the future of it, where the opportunity is for us there?
Sure, Suzanne, and I appreciate Arthur mentioning the fact that we are exporting records amount of LNG and the opportunity and why, just real quickly, not to be political either, irrespective of what happens in this election, we cannot ban fracking because it would have such a hugely significant impact on the rest of the world if we are not able to export this abundant, plentiful, and incredibly affordable resource from the United States. Now, having said that, we've obviously seen over the last 8 months a significant worldwide impact as a result of COVID. And so demand for natural gas is down around the world. Demand for energy period is down around the world. And so look at that, and everyone is, not everyone, but there are folks out there that are saying, okay, see, really LNG exports aren't that important. They're not. It's not going to be a growing market. It's going to be a growing market. We expect that by the mid-20s, there is still going to be a shortage of natural gas in the rest of the world. And the United States, quite honestly, because of the innovative nature of the US, we are the swing market right now for the world. And that's okay, because that's what's enabling us to take advantage of this amazing resource. And so as the swing market, when the demand has gone down, we've seen a disproportionate impact here in the US. We're also going to see a disproportionate impact when it comes back. And in fact, you're starting to see it already. As winter is approaching in Europe, we are starting to see much fewer cancellations. In fact, maybe on one hand type of cancellations. So the LNG market is important. It's growing around the world. And I think it's critical for meeting the world's climate change objectives. And I think it would be a little bit arrogant of us here in the United States to not enable folks to take advantage of this incredible resource, because we were able to build our country on cheap coal, quite honestly, that is now morphed into inexpensive natural gas. And as we innovate, we're bringing inexpensive renewables to the table. We owe it, in my view, to many around the rest of the world to avoid having to use coal, perhaps, because we've got this incredible low carbon way of being able to electrify the rest of the world. And we should take advantage of that. And that is going to happen. We are going to see a resurgence in LNG. We will see FIDs begin again. here in the United States in probably mid-century, or I mean mid-decade, sorry, not mid-century, mid-decade.
That's a long time, Jimmy.
That's a long time. That's mid-decade. And then we will see those plants continue to grow and this market continue to grow throughout the 20s and into the 30s.
So I'm going to prompt one more time for questions if anybody has any. We've got about 14 minutes left of the webinar. So if you have anything, send it in there. Otherwise, we're going to go on. So we just talked about growth. So let's, each of you guys from a different aspect of the industry, let's just real briefly cover where do you see growth coming from over the next 5 years? Don, I'll start with you.
You know, one of the things I really appreciate what Jimmy and Arthur have talked about. Arthur talked about 12.5 million customers in growth. Jimmy talked about investment in real infrastructure like LNG. So one of the reasons that I am convinced that our industry will remain successful is the amazing growth that I see that's happening. I'll give you Dominion as a microcosm of the industry. So Dominion, I'm responsible for the distribution segment, and that segment has the largest EBIT growth between now and 2024 of any other segment within Dominion, and Dominion's got a lot of growth. But to give you an example, it's real growth. In North Carolina and Utah, two of the fastest growing state economies in our country, we are adding thousands of customers every year. In North Carolina, for example, 18 to 20,000 customers per year. In Utah, it's close to 30,000. And these are customers who are choosing the reliability, the convenience, the price stability, the environmental solution that is natural gas. And they are also choosing natural gas because they don't believe in the rhetoric of the anti-gas extremists. Now, there's actually a video, Suzanne, that's coming out this week that's part of Natural Gas Take Action Month, where some builders were interviewed about gas bans. And it's very interesting to hear their perspective because they know the value of natural gas. So that's the microcosm of Utah and North Carolina. In Ohio and West Virginia, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year in replacing aged infrastructure. And these investments not only provide real growth, but they're also critical to the environmental efforts to reduce methane emissions. So those are a few examples. And then we talked about innovation. Arthur, you did a good job talking about innovation. Innovation, for example, with renewable natural gas. This is natural gas that is methane that's escaping into the environment today that the industry is grabbing a hold of, capturing, and putting it back in to the pipeline system. We have committed $650 million of capital to reduce methane emissions into the environment and send it to burner tips. And this includes RNG. We actually have RNG today that is being converted to CNG to provide a cleaner alternative to traditional fuels. So tremendous amount of growth throughout the industry.
Before we jump to either one of these guys, there's the video that you referenced came out last week, Don, but there's another one that's coming out that I think is real interesting where there's the homes are built with the zero carbon with natural gas, and that's something. And then also there's two webinars next week that you're referencing on, they have a RNG, Anheuser-Busch is talking about how they're using RNG for their vehicles. So Jimmy, you want to talk a little bit about where you see growth?
Sure. First and foremost, it's trying to get more gas to Don's growing markets. But we actually do have an
PO, Don.
Yeah, we do have an interconnect with Don's team and with Don's assets out in the Utah area, and that is, but my point of mentioning that is it's requiring us to enable gas to flow in a different direction on our system than it historically has done. And so it literally is bringing some artificial intelligence tools to the table to be able to more effectively move gas and optimize our existing system, creating greater interconnectivity with the rest of the grid so that we can move gas in any direction from any basin, essentially any basin in the United States. And then, like Don was saying, we're modernizing our infrastructure. We have an aged pipeline system. We are making investments. We have a modernization surcharge with our customers. We work in partnership with our customers to make the types of investments that we are making. And that's benefiting them from a reliability perspective. It's benefiting us as well. We've done, some of those investments have been in technology, and that technology is enabling us to lower our emissions as well. So there's a benefit to the entire supply chain. We are effectively utilizing our land. Obviously, as a pipeline with a fair amount of storage assets, we are integrating renewable resources in and around our properties to provide alternative opportunities for our customers as well. Don mentioned this, what he's doing from a renewable natural gas perspective. We are partnering with our customers. We feel like as an interstate pipeline, we can be an even larger aggregator of that resource and be able to blend it more broadly into our markets. And so we think that is a tremendous opportunity as well. And so then the last one is, this industry is forever consolidating, and I think it will continue to forever consolidate. And we are well positioned to take on some what we would view as opportunistic acquisitions. Thanks.
How about you, Arthur, from a municipal point of view? I know that there's lots of growth in the communities.
Yeah, it's really a short answer, because our growth is so dependent upon economic development. Quite frankly, for our cities, most of whom are in rural parts of this state and other states that we serve, and so they're kind of off the beaten path, and frankly, they brought natural gas to their community many years ago on the promise of a reliable, low-cost, efficient fuel that would spur some of that economic development. So they're really trying to attract industry and quite frankly, people. You know, a lot of our cities look at it as placemaking. They're trying to make a place that people want to live. And some of that stuff Don's seeing, where he's seeing the growth in the Carolinas, because many cities in Carolina are doing a great job attracting people and companies and industries. So, but you've got to have an economy that's doing well kind of across the country. And all we've been talking about is critical to that. Reliable, affordable, resilient energy. We need that.
I know that Florida, I was talking to Chuck Warrington, who's also on our board, and he's got like a 12% growth in his area in Florida and Clearwater as well. People trying to get natural gas. I mean, my father lives in Florida. He just installed a natural gas backup generator and for his pool. I mean, people are looking for it because it really keeps the cost down, especially for retired people who are on fixed incomes. So, you know, we have just about 6 minutes left. So I guess what I want to, ESG is such an important part of everything, but part of the ESG where investors really want to hear the answers about how our companies are making commitments to zero carbon or a net zero goal. Dominion has a commitment. I believe you also just made a commitment. So let's take our last 6 minutes to kind of talk about that and how natural gas is going to help achieve that goal.
Very good. Well, I'll start off, because I know if I give the floor to Jimmy, then there won't be any time left. So
I think we've seen that it's otherwise done.
This is a great question, and we are seeing an increased requirement from the investor community for all of our companies to both have a very real growth story, but also a sustainability story. And it's not an option. It's a fundamental to the investment equation. And I'm proud our industry is really stepping up. We're stepping up in terms of the innovation that we've already talked about to reduce methane emissions. As I mentioned, many of our companies have already made net zero commitments. For example, at Dominion on our gas distribution side, we have committed to reduce our methane emissions by 65% by 2030. That's versus a 2010 base, and 80% by 2040. And our industry is using innovation, capital investment to accomplish this objective. Reducing methane is embedded to our culture. And I'll give you an example. I was visiting our East Ohio, Dominion East Ohio last week, and they talked about how they have embedded in the project process a new requirement of how can we reduce methane emissions in every part of the project plan. So it's part of who we are. It's going to be who we're going to be.
Jimmy?
Suzanne, thanks. Don, thanks for that. I thought you were going to go on forever. We at Southern Star, we think there are great ways of being able to reduce our emissions. We have set an objective for ourselves to reduce our methane emissions by 50% by 2025. And we have a plan that we are executing right now. We started that plan in 2018, quite honestly. We saw, even though we had about a 5% increase in throughput on our system between 2018 and 2019, we saw a 5% reduction in our methane emissions. So it's not methane intensity for us. It is about reducing emissions. It's a modest level of investment for us. It's only about $15 or $20 million of additional CapEx to be able to do that. Probably about $1 million, if you will, from an operating perspective to make that happen. But that will essentially eliminate all the pre-combustion methane emissions on the system. During that time frame, we're going to be looking at ways of being able to deal with combustion-related methane. And so, for instance, we are starting a test right now on whether we can introduce how much hydrogen can we introduce at our compressor stations to reduce the amount of emissions coming out of our compressor stations. So we believe that we can eliminate our methane emissions by the end of 2030, and we can be net zero by 2050. And natural gas and some of the innovative uses of natural gas are going to be the way that we get there.
I think a lot of this is about educating the investors, because they really are looking for what the right opportunity is. And unless we get out there and be more educational about all the opportunities that there are using natural gas to reduce it, whether it's including hydrogen, and we have a webinar coming up next week, and I know that investors are really grabbing onto hydrogen and are asking questions around hydrogen. And I think as an entire industry, we have to get much more knowledgeable so that we can help people understand why they want to continue to invest in our companies so that they can get to where they're trying to go. Arthur, did you have any thoughts on that you wanted to share?
And just some of the things that we're actively involved in through APGA Research Foundation and working with GTI. I mean, net zero type buildings, helping to achieve that net zero. We think natural gas can be a really important part of that. Certainly exploring renewable natural gas, which frankly, as these guys have mentioned, actually takes it to carbon negative. Actually, really, really good stuff coming from that part of the business. And I think a lot of what we do is help other companies achieve their carbon goals, whether that's a zero carbon or a net zero. We're trying to help them achieve their goals.
Yeah, and that's the way. All right, well, we are on the close out of this webinar, so I'll let everybody share any last thoughts. Don, I'll let you go last since you talk the most. Jimmy?
Of course he talked the most. I just want to thank everyone for participating today. Suzanne, thank you for guiding us through this. Arthur and Don, thanks for everything that you all have done for SGA and for our industry, and will continue to do. But more importantly, I think we have to continue to bring our message to everyone that we possibly can, that natural gas is a cornerstone to a clean energy future.
Right. Arthur?
A real privilege to be with all of you. Suzanne, you did a super job keeping us on track. I was a little worried at the outset with Don and Jimmy that you were going to have your hands full, but you did a super job. And really just appreciate everybody joining us this morning. We got to keep this sort of thing going. And we've got, SGA's really got the momentum going this month, but we just need to to continue with it. Very excited about what's in store ahead. Folks are doing really good work. Thank
Don,
you, guys.
take us home, Don.
Well, hey, thanks everybody. Enjoyed this morning. Arthur, Jimmy, Suzanne, thank you. Thanks for everybody who joined us online and who will watch in the future. Just simple one thing. Natural gas is the key to our sustainable future. We have to tell that story because if we don't, nobody else will. Thanks.
I encourage everybody to take all the resources that we're putting out all month long, put them out on your LinkedIn, put them out on your social media, go tell your friends and family. The only way this story gets out is from us. And so we're here to help you however we can. There's a hydrogen and RNG webinar next week as well. And you can reach out to member services or me personally, and I'll get you anything that you need to help out. So thank you for joining us. All you guys, great talking to you this morning. Appreciate you being here. Thank you.